Welcome, everyone. I hope that you had a great lunch. I hope that you've also grabbed a coffee, so we are not all like, oh, sleeping. So we keep up the good energy, right? I'm sure you had an amazing starting day of the conference, 3 days conference. Amazing, amazing. My name is Mihaela-Roxana Ghidersa. I'm happy to be in here with you today. It's my first time in this city, so yeah, I'm still experimenting with, okay, what's the vibe? How are the people? But I want to say from the start that the conversation that we are going to have today, it's more around closing a gap. So just from the start, before I tell you some things about me, I'm just curious how many developers we have in the room. Nice. Amazing. Tech conference, and we have any developers. And how many architects? Okay, so I think we are going to have a great conversation today, and I hope that you are going to help me, and I hope that we all learn something today. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a software engineer at heart, of course. Right now, in my current role, I'm technical lead, more in the strategic part of the product. But nonetheless, when I'm not coding or doing something for my current job, I like to prepare content, share my experiences, share the way I see things, share things that I would have liked to know at some point that I didn't get the chance to know in order to avoid some mistakes. And this is what I'm also doing today. So thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity in the end to do what I like. So nice meeting you. So I was telling you about this gap. Right from the start, I have to say that I'm not here to turn your world around and, tell you about the best architecture that you can build, the best practices that you can use in order for your application to have the best architecture. You're going to see that the discussion is going to go a lot on finding your own ways. I'm just going to give you some guiding ideas about how we can do this. And actually, I think that sometimes we are too much focused on the, very techie things like positioning levels, who has the most, smartest idea, the best, the last technology, the technology that promises that is going to do, a big change in our project. Like, that feeling when you are reading about something, you're like, man, this is going to take my application to the next level. And then 6 months later, you're on a forum complaining about how this is not working, how it should. So we are not going to look at any technology in particular. Actually, I think that sometimes it's a bit of a toxic trait that we are having in software development. And this conversation also comes in the context of AI. I'm guessing you heard AI 1,000 times already today. I'm not going to go into the AI part, but what I want to say is that I'm challenging you to look a bit on the perspective of team dynamics, collaboration, things that are very specific for our products. Our products, your product, your product, your product, yeah, so not as a general thing. In order to avoid this conversation about, okay, what we are going to do, AI is going to do everything. What is it still special for us as human beings? Well, there are a lot of things when it comes to, again, team dynamics, collaboration, learning how to look at our projects, learn how to get the best results and the best solutions. So this is what is my objective for today. Of course, I want it to be a two-way interaction and not only a speech and then at the end I'll just leave and more like I'm also interested in learning about your experiences and your ideas. So are we good with this? Yeah, nice. And I was telling you about team dynamics. So maybe you might be wondering, okay, what's the deal with this? Like, why do we, Mihaela, your presentation is about architecture, right? It says very big architecture, the too many faces of architecture. Well, one of the faces that architecture has is impacted by something that it's called the Conway's law. Have you heard about it? I see a lot of nodding, so it seems like it's a popular one, which makes me very happy to see. Basically, we are discussing about the fact that the way our organizations are being organized when it comes to communication and collaboration, that is going to be mirrored in the products that we are building, even though we don't realize this, right? We are not actively doing it. We are not thinking about, okay, I'm working with everyone together, yeah, everyone collaborating with everyone and doing everything as a big group, so for sure my architecture is going to be a monolith. But if you're looking at this, you might see the pattern one way or another. I've been, for example, at some point, actually, there were 2 or 3 projects that I've been working with where I saw this pattern, which is interesting. But one of them, specifically, I think it had like 4 times tries in order, until the point that they were actually successful with what they are doing. So they were switching things in the team. They didn't understand what is happening. They were switching technologies and all sorts of things. Until at some point, of course, this is not the rule, but they thought, okay, let's bring someone that is coming from outside. Let's see how things work. So someone from outside the company came as an architect, and he came with a different perspective, different way of thinking, so not looking at things the same way that everyone was looking, and did a major change into the organization, into the architecture, and so on. So when we are discussing about architecture and teams, we are not only discussing about technical stuff. The other stuff is very, very impactful. And why do we need this conversation? Why actually we need to talk about this? I'm curious how many of you have encountered this idea that at some point in your career, of course, we have architects, you can say that is not the case anymore, but at some point in your career, have you thought that, okay, architecture is something that you said in the beginning, it's fixed, we're complying with that because the architect decided that? Have you encountered this kind of mindset? I know all architectures in here are great, amazing, teams amazing, but let's discuss about other people that are not in this room, for example. Have you heard about these people that actually think like this? Many times, right? Then that, the architecture is an architect's issue. Like, he's being paid to do this. Do your job. Have you heard this kind of developers again? The others, not us in the room. Yeah, I see again nodding. Then that architecture is not about coding. Like, an architect is someone that it's doing some, having some ideas, amazing ideas always. And he's just putting it out there, and the others code. You heard also this. Well, these are some myths, right? And this actually, it's essential to dispel because they are leading us to misconceptions. They are leading us to having slow progress and actually having to rewrite applications on and on and on. And just if you are searching for some numbers related to how many projects actually are successful in software development, how many are struggling, how many are failing, you are going to actually see what is behind this myth. So we are going to debunk them today one by one. But we were talking about architecture. How many of you can define architecture? Can you tell me in just a couple of words?
The software architecture is everything that enables us to build software at scale.
Okay, so it's a very big thing, hard to define, right? Anyone else? Once I saw also in here a hand. Anyone? Yeah. It's what's hard to change. I like this because makes people not want to be architects anymore. Any other ideas? I have to be honest also while preparing for this presentation, and not only in my career trying to define what is this and hearing here and there what is architecture, I heard a lot of definitions. And it seemed to me that most of them were very, although they were having some truth, they were very abstract and hard to understand for a developer. Maybe someone that's been, in the industry for a lot of years can understand it or give it a shape like, get the essence in there. But when it comes to teams, it's a bit hard to understand what is architecture. So maybe we can start from this, just some starting point. Yeah, we are starting with our application from somewhere. Yeah, trying to build it step by step, component after component, defining relationships. And consider that all of this is being realized while taking into consideration how the project is adapting, the technologies, changes in the teams, and so on. So it's a continuous process. That's why it's everything. Yeah, we were hearing a definition that it's everything. Because actually it's on a long period of time. Yeah, architecture is not something that we are building today and we are not touching anymore. Just look at, I'm guessing that since I'm talking to you here, another 5 JavaScript libraries appeared. So it can be something fixed anywhere, right? But the question is, okay, we are saying, okay, we have to, it's about the these things, yeah, the basic, the important things that we are, what are these important things? How we are actually defining these things, how we are actually knowing exactly what is that. And Grady Bach, maybe if you didn't hear the name, you worked maybe with the UML diagram, so you worked with his work, but he was saying that architecture is defined by the significant things, where the significant things have the most cost. So it's about the costly things. Then on the other side, we have Simon Brown that very nicely says that architecture is about the things that you cannot change in an afternoon. So again, significant, impactful things. And how are we defining that? How we are defining what is impactful, significant, and so on? Well, I'm going to make a small parenthesis in here, and I'm going to ask, I told you it's going to be a conversation, so bear with me. How many of you have other hobbies, other interests that besides software? And if you ever find yourself applying things from that other domain into your day-to-day work? Can we have an example from here? I'm curious.
First thing I think of is one of the other talkers we mentioned about like medical stuff and biology when looking into metrics and plots, like thinking in a perspective of, I don't know, your day-to-day life into the software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe when we were discussing about biology, we can discuss about those networks, right, that are evolving and extending. So we can use those principles also in architecture. I saw other hands. Another answer, if someone dares to share. Anyone? In there? Yes, please. Okay, okay. So we can use a multidisciplinary way of thinking to look at our work. Why is it important? Let's just take this. If we have a CEO, we have someone from finance and the developer, right? Each of their perspectives upon the team, when they are looking at the team that is working on a feature, it is different, right? The CEO looks from a perspective, the financial person from the perspective of, okay, money, how many people do we have, raises, and so on. And the developer is looking from the perspective, okay, so we have so many features we need to comply with, let's see how we are doing the plan, and so on. And each of this perspective is correct, right? It's a correct perspective. Like, it's normal for the CEO to expect some results, or the financial people to think about their part when it comes to the... But none of them is actually keeping, the whole picture. It's not showing the whole picture. So we are missing things when we are not looking beyond our domain. For example, if I'm just saying that I'm a .NET developer, or I'm a Java developer, even if I don't realize it, I'm setting myself for looking things in that area, right? Session at the conference, the books that I'm reading, the projects that I'm looking for, and so on. But if I'm extending a bit and I'm saying, okay, I'm a developer, or I'm a person that is working with .NET, or that it's working with Java, suddenly I can extend and look, at the problems that I'm working with, at the solutions from another perspective. So coming back to architecture, it's important for us to look at things from different perspectives and open our minds. And why this, I'm closing the parenthesis now, why this? Because I've been looking at architecture from the perspective of building architecture, and urban planning. And we have this concept of sharing layers that basically is helping us, just as we are defining into our houses, our buildings, the things that are, okay, I know that for sure I have to be very careful how I'm creating the foundation of my house, right? Because I cannot come 3 months from now and be like, I'm just changing my foundation. I don't care about anything else. I want it to stay the same, but my foundation, I want it to stay like this, right? I can do that. So this is a concept in architecture that says that, okay, I can actually see the layers that, from the moment or from the perspective of how easy it is for them to be changed later in order for me to understand what is significant. And the same we have in software, right? By seeing this, I can actually understand how actually, for example, I cannot change the technology that easy, but I can change the theme in my application, right? I can work with that. So it's something that I can work with easier, and it doesn't mean that I have to make a big decision about that. It's easier to change later. And you might be tricked into thinking that, okay, as developers, we don't have to think about this. As long as and I'm hearing this a lot from a lot of my friends that are working in this field. Yeah, but I don't care about the product. I don't care about the architecture, because at this point, I'm just doing my job, taking my money, and that's it. And my code is very good. Like, I'm using good practices and whatever, but I'm not interested in a project. And actually, there is a very important part of understanding the application as a whole and not ignoring the architecture, the design that the application has, and so on. It helps us being aligned with that vision that the architect had in the beginning, right? When he started working with this. Helps us also align with the best practices, with the direction of the product. When we are making a decision, understanding the whole context might help us understand, okay, how my decision, how that class that I'm adding is going to work in the whole scheme of things. And we can go further even to, identifying early potential bottlenecks, see what we are doing right now that can actually end up in a very costly rework later. So these are things to take into consideration when we are just thinking, okay, I'm doing my job, that's it. It's not important for me, the project is working like that. And we are discussing developers, we are discussing architecture. You might be wondering, okay, but the architect, where is the architect in all of this? Like, where does it fit? And how we were saying that the architecture is something very hard to define? I challenge you to define the architect now. What's an architect? What's the architect supposed to do? Please, in the back. Responsibility, okay, not a role. Anyone else has an opinion about architects? Like, architects are going to be... Please.
Making decisions about trade-offs. Everything is a trade-off. You need to decide. You need to make a decision based on pros and cons.
Okay, so we have decisions in one part, and then the trade-offs in another. Anyone else wants to share?
Communicating the architecture.
Communication, yeah. So we also have, all of you guys said soft skills. I did not hear anyone saying it's important to know the principles of, I don't know. Of course, it's important to know a principle, but it's a lot about these soft skills, right? This is what I heard. We're moving with this further. So indeed, it's hard to define the architect. So let's look a bit at what an architect is not. An approachable role. You're saying, we are hearing in the back that it's it's a role, and in here it's about decisions and trade-offs. I'm going to give you my experience. My first contact with software architecture and actually a software project in general, it was very shady, I must say it. Because I was working in a team for about 1.5 years. I never met the architect. I did not even knew that the application has an architecture. Like, no one was discussing it. It was discussed so minimal to the task at hand that I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this and, push and hope we won't get some bugs at some point. Yeah, so this is it's my personal experience. I hope you guys had better experiences. I'm sure there are great architects in the room. Don't get me wrong, it's my experience. Then when I switched to a new project, the architect was sitting next to me, like he was having his office right next to me, and I was very shocked by this. But that's where I understood the difference between the title, architect, and that's it, and an actual role. Somewhere where you're actually contributing, staying close to the team, raising the team, collaborating, gathering ideas, and so on. Then it's the god of the whole stack. Can any of the architects today say that they are the gods of the whole stack? Is this a healthy way of looking at things? I know it's a lot of pressure on architects or on people or senior people, right? Because when a junior is looking at you, it's like, give me the answer, just resolve this and let me be, right? So that's an unrealistic expectation. I wouldn't want to be an architect if someone would expect me to know everything. I'm not a magician. I'm just another software developer that's gained some experience along the time and can make some decisions. So for real, we don't want this role. More realistic is to actually work with the team, grow the team, and actually help the project become better while using the expertise that we are sharing into that team. Then defines and guards the architecture, like the architecture police. Don't change anything in the architecture. It's dangerous. What does this say to us if we have to guide it? To guard it, that something is very wrong in there, and this architect doesn't want anyone to do or to come with any proposal regarding the architecture because something is very fragile in there. Yeah, so we have to leave it like this. You know how they are those things that are in perfect balance, but if you're just taking a piece of it, it's just the champagne pyramids. You're taking one of the glasses, but if you're taking the wrong one, you're off. So I think that at this point we can actually conclude, right, or to say that we destroy that myth with architecture is not changing and it's forever, because architecture is changing because of technologies that are evolving and the software that should be able to actually leverage these new innovations in the field, because the business changes, the requirements change. I'm not even going to start on the clients and the things that they're asking. We need another session for that. Like, we need another session and a psychologist, I think. In the room, it would be very helpful if you are starting that conversation. And then it's the refactoring, improving the architecture, working with the software. So it can be something that we cannot change. But okay, we know what is not an architect, and we know that he cannot be someone that has all the answers, but what is an architect in the end? And I received, every time I'm having this session, either during the session or afterwards, I have 1-2 developers that are coming, okay, but can you tell me, like, what are the things exactly that I have to do in order to become an architect or to come close to that role? Like, tell me, like, 3 things that I have to do, like the 3 steps. And there are no 3 steps. It's like telling, okay, tell me the ways in which I can make my partner happy at home. I don't know your partner. I can suppose, but I can't give you this kind of information. No one can give you unless it's looking at the context. And there is this mental model that is called relativity that says that things are not absolute, and often they depend on context and perspectives. Just think about the moment when you're choosing a new technology. You know, it's not about, okay, this is the newest, a lot of people are adopting it, so I might as well take it because this is the best. The best for what? You have to look at your project, you have to look at the requirements and the timelines and the skills in the team and so on. And the same goes for the architect. An architect that works in an e-commerce platform doesn't have the same focus as one that is working maybe on something healthcare related or financial. Yeah? They are looking at different things. Of course, there are some basics that we all develop as software developers, you know, junior, mid-year, senior, and whatever are the positioning levels. But this is something that's being built anyway. It's not the perfect recipe for every project. Like, we are using this in every project and everything is going to be just fine. So we were discussing about this basic. We cannot put the finger on what is an architect, but we can look at two things. Leadership, yeah, we are talking about soft skills, leadership, and expertise or technicalities, because I totally support the fact that an architect, a software architect, should have a technical background, that's for sure. But since we are trying to get the skills, let's just open the discussion with the circle of competence, which is a mental model, that we can think of it as something that is going to help us both learn where we are, be sure, you know, be aware about our skills and also what we want to build. For example, if I'm someone in the beginning of my career, most probably I'm going to work a lot into the stuff that I need to know, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what are the things at this point, no matter what is the level that I'm at, what are the things that I am very good at? Are the technology that I'm using, are design patterns. I am very good at doing unit tests, whatever it's your thing. Then, as I'm growing, right, I'm trying to expand my knowledge. Maybe I have to work with another technology. Maybe AI is coming. Maybe something happens in the management and they are switching the direction. So I'm starting to build step by step, yeah, working with others, with people that are working already with that technology and so on. So the circle of competence basically tells us, okay, focus for the current projects on what you know, and when you want to expand, be sure that you're not overextending, and you know, just because something looks like something that you've been working with before, this does not mean that you can make a decision about it, or you can go into the code and do whatever you think it's right in there. More like use the expertise of the ones around you to build on this. Why I'm discussing about this? Because we were saying about the architect and this basic, like this part where the architect should be, not specific, but in general. And there is this concept about technical breadth over technical depth. As a junior or as someone that I'm at the beginning of my career, most probably I'm going to focus on the technical depth, right? I'm trying to build very strong skills in order to gain confidence in my work, in what I'm doing, receive feedback from the others, you know, and grow step by step. Then when we are discussing technical breadth, basically we are thinking, okay, at this point, I want to extend myself, right? I have a base that I've been working with, I'm good with it, but I want to extend more. So I'm looking outside, trying to go over different perspectives, different fields, different technologies, projects, and so on. So I'm more working in the part where I can understand context, not only you know, input-output kind of requests. I have these requirements, I have to do this feature, let's move on with it. And then we have the T-shaped skills that actually combine the two, you know, combine the depth in some areas with having breadth in another areas of, yeah, and trying to balancing and you know, the things that we are good with the things where we need to understand more concepts and work with different things that we are not familiar with, and also combines very good with the multidisciplinary thinking that I was mentioning before, because this kind of overview, it's not gained only by looking at things in a single way. And I wanted to specifically mention this book because this is where I really liked how, of course, it's overextended and over explicated this concept, and not only, but also because this is where, even though I had this thing, have been thinking, this is where I heard the first time about these concepts being put like this. So I knew about the circle of competence, I knew about the way we should look at the role of an architect or of someone that is senior and has expertise, but never actually put them together. And in this book, I really liked how the Mark Richard, it's explaining this relationship and how things can be done together. So we can think about this every time we are trying to learn something new, trying to be approach a different area that we are not really sure, that we are moving into this circle and see exactly where we are and what are the things that we need in order to grow to the next level. And in our case, of course, the architect is the one that goes with the T-shaped skills, right? Where, of course, in order to get that, there he, she, have some sort of basis, right? Knowledge, working with the teams, writing code, having all sorts of problems, but at the same time, they're also overextending their knowledge, doing POC, working with all sorts of areas in order to take the best decisions. So it's not about having very, all the knowledge. It's more like having this knowledge that we are to work with, knowing what questions to put, and actually what to do with this knowledge. Because I can know all the principles, I can know all the architectural patterns and so on, but if I don't know how to put them into a context, it's going to be very difficult to actually get some results. So, very hard conversation sometimes, this is, right? Because I'm feeling it myself every time I'm discussing about this topic, I just see it in your faces and how you are, talking to each other just a bit, that there are a lot of things that you've been gathering into your projects and you've been working with, and you would like to say something about it, or either, yes, it happened to me, or why is this happening in projects, or what is it about? So I can see that, I know that it's not a comfortable conversation, but we need to have it. And we need to enhance this relationship between developers and architects, because indeed, they might be the people that are making the decisions later. And these decisions are actually for the products that we are using. We just step away from thinking as professionals, technical professionals, and we think as people. I want the architect that is working with the software that is managing my money to be someone that is making good decisions. Let's hope that is okay. So, architecture is for every developer, right? We can agree on this after, 30 minutes of discussing. It is. Developers need to understand what's the deal with architecture, but is every developer prepared to actually being an architect? Like, do you think that if someone at some point is involved in some discussion about architecture or in some decision, and they have a good idea, they are ready to be an architect, is that enough, like to have the skills to put some input in there? No. I see the gestures and I agree with you. No, because we need in there development. We need years of practice, years of actually failing, but failing like big time, when you hate your life and wonder why aren't you just crafting something, something nice, doing some decorations or something that is actually relaxing. That kind of failure, where we are actually learning something, working with different kinds of projects, and so on. Of course, every developer has the potential to be an architect, but there is a process. It's not something that we are doing just like this. A manager comes and says, okay, you're going to be a developer, you're going to be an architect. Oh, and yeah, great, from today I'm an architect. No, I hear all sorts of situations where the teams are struggling because someone just put someone as an architect in there without being the right person, and they're just struggling with collaboration, communication, raising the project, and so on. Even though that person, for sure, in the interview had amazing skills and experience, they are just not the good fit for that domain, for that product type, and so on. Then, are developers just going to code and architects are just going to, do architecture? What do you think? Are architects in this room coding? I see less hands. Oh my God. Is it because it's the lunch setting in, or is it because you are not coding? So there is a need. You agree with me that we need architects to code, right? To be in the code. But how do we do that? Because architects are so busy. Like they are sitting all day in meetings and trying to, make these decisions, important decisions that we are discussing about and so on. How do we do that? How?
Make architecture a team effort.
Make architecture a team effort. Nice. What else? Pair programming. Very good. But do they have the time to do pair programming? So basically, we're still evolving into those basics. Okay, other approaches.
Doing less important code test, not being bottleneck, but doing the less important bugs or something.
Yeah. So staying involved without becoming a bottleneck for the team. And the list can go on from actual coding, which it's like, oh, do we have the time? We don't have the time. What do we do with that? We can go to that part where we involve the whole team. So maybe I know, okay, I don't have the time to do this, but how can I get the more information about the code base? I'm just going to, I know there is a senior developer, or there is someone that would be a very good feed for helping me with insights from the application into this specific area. So I'm giving them ownership to take care of this part, help me with expanding it, and so on. Yeah, so we are involving the team into the decision making. Then we have POC, proof of concepts that we can do to not become a bottleneck for the team. Pair programming, code reviews, unit tests that are guarding the architecture, more like making sure that everyone is on the right side and we are not missing important concepts from the architecture and doing a mess in there. Some quality gates, but what I like the most and I really want to recommend, I've been doing it with my teams along the way, very good results, and not only that it's very good in terms of doing architecture, but for collaboration, for getting the architect close to the teams and so on, which is having some architectural katas. Are you guys familiar with coding katas? Yeah, so basically we're building right on, we are having an exercise and we're trying to resolve it in as many ways as possible with different technologies and so on. So, and they are simple exercises, not complex ones, right? We are not re-architecting Twitter. We are starting with some very simple examples that we can work with. For example, you can go on Neil Ford's site and you are going to find in there a lot of suggestions of katas that you can use if you don't have ideas of requirements and so on from this little projects that you want to build. So the thing is not about being the god of the whole stack, being someone that it's overstepping on someone's role. It's not about not caring, even though it's becoming a trend in the industry, being just focused on one part and being over with all the policies and processes in the companies and things that are changing and so on. It's not about that. It's about looking at our products, looking at ourselves. Of course, if you find yourself that you just don't want to work in software development, you have nothing to look within anymore, like things are clear. But for the ones that want to, maybe go towards this kind of role, work better with their teams, when we're talking about architects, do an improvement into the day-to-day work. Just think of the things that we've been discussing today. Challenge yourself, challenge the limits that you have. Try an exercise, a simple exercise to see the results and try to build up on that. And you can search for me on Twitter or on LinkedIn and give me a message and tell me how that went. Also, I wrote a book with my perspective on this. Again, as I was saying in the beginning, things that I've been learning from others, conclusions of my own, a lot of recommendations in there. So if you feel that it's useful, also you can use it. Thank you very much. And let's discuss if there are any questions or things that you would like to not agree with me. I'm here, I'm listening. Thank you.